On April 1st, 2026, a rocket taller than the Statue of Liberty lit up the Florida coastline with 8.8 million pounds of thrust, and for the first time in over half a century, human beings left Earth orbit. 4 astronauts strapped inside the Orion spacecraft, callsign Integrity, were headed to the moon, not to land, not yet, but to prove that the machine could carry people there and bring them home alive. And for 10 days the entire world watched. However, now that they are back safe, now that the celebration champagne has gone flat and the confetti has been swept up, NASA faces a question that should keep everyone at the agency up at night. Because flying past the moon, that was the easy part. Getting to the surface is going to be something else entirely. To understand why Artemis II matters so much, you need to understand the gap that came before it. The last time a human being traveled beyond low Earth orbit was December 1972, when Gene Cernan climbed back into the Apollo 17 lunar module, looked out at the gray dust, and left. Nobody followed him, not for 53 years. And it wasn't because we forgot how. Multiple programs tried and failed to pick up where Apollo left off. The Constellation program under President Bush, the Asteroid Redirect mission under President Obama. Billions of dollars spent on rockets, capsules, and plans that got canceled before they ever flew. By some estimates, the total spent on efforts to return to the moon since the space shuttle era has reached $107 billion adjusted for inflation. That's not a typo. Until 10 days ago, not a single human had gone back. Artemis II broke that streak, and it did it with a crew that looked nothing like Apollo. Commander Reed Wiseman is a 50-year-old Navy captain and former fighter pilot from Baltimore who previously lived aboard the International Space Station. He became the oldest person to travel beyond low Earth orbit and the first to command a lunar mission since Cernan himself. Wiseman carried a deeply personal weight into space. His wife Carol died of cancer in 2020, and the crew would later honor her in one of the most emotional moments of the entire mission. Pilot Victor Glover, also 50, grew up in Pomona, California, flew 24 combat missions as a Navy test pilot, and had already made history as the pilot of the first operational SpaceX Crew Dragon mission. On Artemis II, he became the first black astronaut and the first person of color to travel beyond low Earth orbit. Think about that for a second. In the entire history of human spaceflight, every person who ever saw the moon up close was a white American man. Until Victor Glover. Mission specialist Christina Koch, 47, is an electrical engineer from Grand Rapids, Michigan, who spent winters at the South Pole before joining NASA. She already held the record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman at 328 days, and performed the first all-female spacewalk in 2019. On Artemis II, she became the first woman to leave Earth orbit and travel toward the moon. And then there is Jeremy Hansen, a Royal Canadian Air Force colonel, a CF-18 fighter pilot from a farm near London, Ontario. Hansen became the first Canadian and the first non-American to fly beyond low Earth orbit. Oh, and one more thing. Artemis II was his first space flight ever, his very first time leaving the planet, and he went to the moon. His mission patch was designed by an Anishinaabe artist and referenced indigenous teachings because even mission patches are different now. The mission itself followed a free return trajectory, a figure-8 path around the moon. If the engines failed at any point after leaving Earth orbit, the moon's gravity would sling the crew back toward home automatically. It is the same emergency path Apollo 13 used after its oxygen tank exploded in 1970. So NASA designed the entire mission around the worst-case scenario. After launching from Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39B, the same pad that launched every Apollo lunar mission, the crew spent 2 days in increasingly higher Earth orbits. Glover performed a proximity operations test with the spent upper stage, practicing the kind of maneuvering that will be critical for future docking missions. Then on April 2nd, the European service module fired its main engine for 5 minutes and 49 seconds, pushing Orion out of Earth orbit and onto a course for the moon. That moment, the trans-lunar injection burn, was the first time humans had left Earth orbit since 1972. Think about the weight of that. An entire generation was born, grew up, grew old, and some of them died in the time between those two burns. 4 days later, on April 6th, Orion swept behind the far side of the moon at roughly 4,600 miles above the surface. For about 40 minutes, the moon completely blocked all communication with Earth. No radio, no telemetry, nothing. The crew was more alone than any living human had ever been. And what did they do during that blackout? They ate maple cream cookies that Hansen brought from Canada. Because Canadians are going to Canadian, even at the moon. When they emerged from the far side, Koch radioed a message that was heard around the world. She addressed the continents of Asia, Africa, and Oceania directly, telling them the crew was looking right at them from 250,000 miles away. During the flyby, the crew observed something almost no human has ever witnessed. A solar eclipse from the far side of the moon. The sun's corona wrapped around the lunar disk in a ring of fire. They watched Earth set behind the moon's horizon, an image that immediately drew comparisons to Apollo 8's iconic Earthrise photograph from 1968. They made real-time geological observations of about 30 targets on the far side, including the massive Oriental Basin that stretches 600 miles across. And they spotted at least 4 micrometeorite impacts, tiny flashes on the dark surface, that made NASA scientists back in Houston literally scream with excitement. At the farthest point in their trajectory, the crew reached 252,756 miles from Earth. That broke Apollo 13's record from 1970 by roughly 4,100 miles. 4 human beings were farther from home than any humans had ever been, but the real test was getting home. And this is where it gets intense, because the biggest anxiety leading into Artemis II was not the rocket, the navigation, or even the crew, it was the heat shield. After Artemis I, the uncrewed test flight in November 2022, engineers found over 100 locations of unexpected char loss on Orion's heat shield. The protective material had eroded in patterns nobody predicted. Now, redesigning the shield would have delayed the mission by a year and a half, maybe more. So NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman made a call: fly with the existing shield and modify the re-entry trajectory to reduce stress on it. Some engineers inside the agency disagreed with that decision, but Isaacman greenlit it. On April 10th, the service module separated and Orion hit Earth's atmosphere at 24,661 miles per hour. That's Mach 33. The capsule was wrapped in superheated plasma so intense that radio signals could not penetrate it, creating a 6-minute communications blackout. Peak forces hit 3.9 Gs, pressing the crew into their seats with nearly 4 times their body weight. The drogue parachutes deployed at 22,000 feet. The main chutes opened at 6,000 feet. And at 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time, Orion splashed down in the Pacific Ocean about 40 miles off San Diego. The flight director called it a perfect bullseye splashdown and said his team had never seen anything as precise as Orion's landing. The heat shield gamble paid off, but NASA is still planning a redesign for future missions because flying on thin margins is not a long-term strategy. And then there was the toilet. Hours after launch, the urine collection fan jammed. Koch troubleshot and fixed it, earning herself the nickname Space Plumber. A day later, frozen urine in a vent line blocked the waste dumping system entirely, forcing the crew onto backup collection bags for about 24 hours, while engineers figured out how to heat the nozzle and clear the ice. NASA's official characterization was valuable test data. The crew's unofficial characterization was probably less diplomatic. But despite the heat shield anxiety and the plumbing issues, Artemis II was declared an overwhelming success. NASA's associate administrator said the path to the lunar surface was now open. Over 10 million people watched the launch simultaneously across streaming platforms. 18 million Americans tuned in across broadcast and cable television. NASA's YouTube channel alone pulled 17 million viewers during the launch window. The Artemis hashtag racked up 2.7 billion views on TikTok. And then there were the moments that no amount of engineering could have planned for. Koch delivered a speech from deep space that became the most quoted passage of the mission. She talked about how we don't leave Earth, we choose it, and that no matter how far we explore, we will always choose each other. When Isaacman asked her to describe the journey in a single word, she said humility. But the moment that broke, everyone came from Hansen. During the flyby, he asked the crew's permission to name a bright crater on the far side Carol, after Wiseman's late wife. The commander wept. The whole crew wiped tears. 250,000 miles from home, 4 people who had trained for years to be calm under pressure completely fell apart over an act of kindness. So that was the triumph. Now comes the hard part. 5 weeks before Artemis II even launched, Isaacman dropped a bombshell that restructured the entire Artemis program. Artemis III, which was originally supposed to be the first crewed lunar landing, was completely redesigned. Instead of going to the moon's surface, Artemis III will now be an Earth orbit docking test, where the Orion capsule practices rendezvousing with commercial lunar landers from SpaceX and possibly Blue Origin. Think of it like Apollo 9, where they tested the lunar module in Earth orbit before committing to the actual moon landing on Apollo 11. The first crewed landing got pushed to Artemis IV, now targeting early 2028. The planned upgrades to the SLS rocket, the Block 1B and Block 2 variants, were canceled entirely. NASA will standardize on a modified version of the current rocket. The Lunar Gateway space station, which was supposed to orbit the moon and serve as a waypoint, was paused too. Its power module is being repurposed for an interplanetary nuclear spacecraft. Isaacman's reasoning was blunt. He said launching a rocket as complex as SLS every 3 years is not a path to success. He wants launches every 10 months. But here's the thing that should concern everyone watching this. The single biggest piece of the puzzle, the vehicle that is supposed to actually land astronauts on the moon, has never made it to orbit. SpaceX's Starship human landing system is 165 feet tall, taller than a 15-story building, and it needs to launch to orbit, get refueled by a fleet of tanker starships, fly to the moon, and land vertically on the surface. Through 11 test flights from April 2023 to October 2025, Starship has had 6 successes and 5 failures. 1 ship exploded over the Turks and Caicos Islands. 2 were lost to pressurization and vibration problems. The revolutionary booster catch system has worked 3 times, which is impressive, but the Block 3 vehicle with upgraded Raptor 3 engines has not even flown yet. Its debut is targeted for May 2026. And the single most critical technology that has not been demonstrated is orbital propellant transfer. The architecture requires launching a fuel depot to orbit, then filling it with an estimated 8 to 14 tanker flights before the landing vehicle can refuel and head for the moon. SpaceX has transferred liquid oxygen between tanks inside a single ship, but no ship-to-ship fuel transfer has ever been attempted. Former NASA Administrator Mike Griffin ran the math. Even at a 98% success rate per launch and transfer, stringing together 15 to 20 sequential operations yields only about a 70% cumulative chance of success. Those are not great odds when human lives are on the line. SpaceX has completed 49 contractual milestones with NASA, and over $2.6 billion of the roughly $4 billion contract has been paid out. But the hardest milestones, reaching orbit, long-duration spaceflight, the refueling demo, and uncrewed lunar landing test are all still ahead. Then there is the spacesuit. Axiom Space, working with the fashion house Prada, is developing the Axiom suit that astronauts will wear to walk on the moon. It is a massive upgrade over Apollo-era technology. It fits bodies from the 1st to the 99th percentile, supports moonwalks of 8 or more hours, survives temperature swings of 500 degrees Fahrenheit at the lunar poles, and includes 4G communications and regenerable carbon dioxide scrubbing. But the portable life support system has been a problem. NASA acknowledged in late 2024 that Axiom was struggling with the redesign. The backup contractor, Collins Aerospace, withdrew from the program entirely, leaving Axiom as the only game in town. In March 2026, Isaacman unveiled something called Project Ignition, a $20 billion plan to build a permanent base at the lunar South Pole near Shackleton Crater. 3 phases. First, deploy rovers and instruments. Then build semi-habitable infrastructure with international partners. Finally, construct large habitats and pressurized rovers for weeks-long lunar excursions. Senator Ted Cruz made clear the reason. It needs to happen before China does it. China is not messing around. The Chinese crewed lunar program is targeting a landing before 2030 using two Long March 10 rockets to separately launch a crew capsule and a lander that rendezvous in lunar orbit. As of late 2025, China's space agency confirmed the program was on track. Their uncrewed chang'e missions keep delivering results. Chang'e 6 returned the first ever samples from the moon's far side in May 2024. Chang'e 7 is heading to the South Pole in 2026 to hunt for water ice. Chang'e 8 in 2028 will test building structures from lunar soil using 3D printing. China and Russia have partnered on the International Lunar Research Station with a basic facility planned by 2035. Their coalition is smaller than the 61-nation Artemis Accords, but they are building it methodically. Hovering over all of this ambition, both American and Chinese, is the budget reality. The Trump administration's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 would have slashed NASA by 24%, from $24.8 billion to $18.8 billion. It would have terminated 53 science missions and ended production of SLS rockets and Orion capsules after just one more flight. Congress pushed back hard. The reconciliation bill signed in July 2025 allocated roughly $10 billion in additional funding, and the final enacted budget came in at $24.4 billion, far above the White House request. But the tension between the executive branch wanting cuts and Congress wanting moon missions creates the kind of uncertainty that kills space programs. Artemis has survived 4 different presidential administrations now, each with different priorities. Each transition risks the stop-start cycle that has already consumed tens of billions of dollars in the decades between Apollo and today. So where does that leave us? Artemis II proved the hardware works. The SLS rocket can launch people. The Orion capsule can keep them alive for 10 days in deep space and bring them home safely through re-entry at 24,000 miles per hour. The navigation, the life support, the communications, all of it performed. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything that needed to happen before anyone could talk seriously about landing. But between here and bootprints on the lunar surface, there is a vehicle that has never reached orbit, a refueling system that has never been tested, a spacesuit with a troubled life support system, a $20 billion construction project, a budget that faces existential threats every fiscal year, and a Chinese program that is methodically closing the gap. What makes this time different from the post-Apollo collapse is that the pieces exist in a way they did not before. Commercial partners like SpaceX and Blue Origin are bringing innovation and investment that did not exist in the 1970s. International partnerships through the Artemis Accords span 61 nations. The scientific case for the South Pole, where water ice could support long-term habitation, gives the program a purpose beyond flags and footprints. And the geopolitical competition with China provides the kind of urgency that historically moves Washington to write checks. Christina Koch said it best from 250,000 miles away. She said her strong hope was that Artemis II would be the start of an era where every person on Earth could look up at the moon and think of it as a destination. The crew of integrity opened the door. Building the house on the other side? That's the mission that actually matters, and it hasn't started yet. If this blew your mind, subscribe. We cover space and science stories like this every week. Drop a comment. Do you think NASA will land on the moon before China does? I want to hear your take.